So one thing for those viewing and from a career advancement standpoint, I mean, you've had a really broad bandwidth of experience in
Mm.
these different areas we talked about before in governance and field action, compliance. So I know with the group that you deal with right now, you're dealing with medical writers, you're dealing with quality assurance, certainly the clinical research aspect, how that data is collected. What areas, a lot of the things that we work on, I always laugh when I'm talking to our team because it's like, well, this is a hard search. It's like everything we do is hard. Um, but what, from a career, an opportunity standpoint for somebody out there that's maybe they're more technical writing, maybe they're clinical research, they're regulatory affairs,
Mm.
quality. Where do you see at Baxter or in the last few years sort of trending the areas that are harder to find that talent and where there's going to be more opportunities because of that?
Um, I think when you look at the talent pieces, having medical or the research area with a higher business acumen has probably been our biggest challenge.
Okay.
In the sense of we run a business, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes we, and I say we because I'm in the healthcare profession, we tend to think science first, business second.
Right.
Whereas I think for us and getting leaders and people to be incredibly savvy about the business is probably our biggest gap. So when we're recruiting for some of our open roles, we assume the baseline is the technical competency, right? You understand how to run medical writing stats. You're a good medical affairs person who can design clinical trials. I think it's how do you understand our business from a business lens that will make medical people incredibly successful. I think the other piece is how do you innovate? How do you keep staying ahead of the game and challenging yourself and your current thought processes to think about the next step? What's next? Where are we going? So as we're recruiting for leaders in our teams, that's kind of what we're looking at. And even as we get down to individual contributors, I think from a skill set perspective, we're really pushing to say it's just not good enough to have the baseline technical competency anymore. You got to really understand how you fit into all of what we're doing. And the more you can do that, I think the more successful they'll be.
Yeah, because you understand what the person that you're working with cross-functionally, what is important to them, what their challenges are from their seat. And the more you can
That's right.
understand that connectivity, the more you can understand where somebody else is coming from and be able to meet them in the middle. One thing that you just
Mm.
said right there. So one of the clinical research manager positions we're working on for a client right now, one of the first things when I was talking to the chief medical officer, it's like, I really, really need somebody that understands the operational side, the budgeting, the data analysis from a compliance standpoint. But the whole
Yep.
conversation and the focus, a lot of times it's, well, have they dealt with protocol development for the trial? Setting it up and then managing it from start to finish. But to your point, it was like, hey, we have to run a trial in a financially feasible way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because at
Yeah.
the end of the day, this isn't a scenario where we have this huge grant or, an academic situation where this can just go on endlessly. No, we have timelines, budgets, and we have to show a profit. So from an efficiency standpoint, that they have to have that piece.
Yeah, and example we recently had, from a traditional perspective, we were working on a clinical program, and they came back with a pretty high budget, let's say roughly about $5 million. And for some of our product portfolio, like $5 million about choked the commercial leader. Was like, what? How much? Yeah, and that was a traditional, like out of the box kind of, hey, we're going to do this kind of study. It's a 6-month recruitment. It's going to take 18 months in total, 24 months before you have your data. And you could see on the commercial person's face, right? Like this is lost revenue, 24 months. How much slower could it be?
Yeah.
So really in that scenario, just to pressure test the team, my question was, what if you only had $2 million? What are you going to do? Like, are you not going to do any study? You're not just not going to do anything?
Right.
So really pushing them to say, hey, if you're a small mom and pop shop and you don't have deep coffers and all you got is $2 million to invest in this entire development, and all of your company's financial future depends on it. So the faster you get there, the more sustainable your company is. What are you going to do? You're going to say you're not going to do it?
Right.
So it was fascinating because you could see what it did is the team's brains were unlocked at the moment, right? Someone said, hey, step outside of your box, get outside of your normal swim lane, and think totally different, right? Like put on a different hat, put on an innovative, an entrepreneurial hat. And I have done consulting work for smaller startup companies and learn a ton by that approach, right? They are like incredibly innovative. Now,
Yeah.
they take some big risks that maybe bigger companies wouldn't, but at the same time, it really does challenge you to think differently. And I think that's a good thing for our teams. And again, for medical folks, it's really good to be pushed and think differently.
Hear me, would you speak to me when I open up? And I forward my thoughts to you, but sometimes I'd say you're thinking too much, and I don't want to have